welcome back to another video. I've got an excellent build for you in Destiny 2 here, and if you want results like this for an onslaught compared to your teammates, boy do I have the build for you. Alrighty, so for this build, you can use this for all kinds of content, whether it's easy or hard. It is centered around the new warlock exotic Rhymecoat Raiment. And I'll get into why we're using this exotic later. But the main gameplay loop is centered around the stasis turret because of this exotic armor. So let's get into the actual prismatic setup to begin with. Alright, so we're going to start with the Song of Flame super. This is just the best prismatic super and just the best warlock super in general. So I feel like there's no reason not to run it. I mean, you don't have to. You can run any of the supers if you want a burst damage super like Nova Bomb. But Nova Bomb is still pretty mid at best, I think. But Song of Flame's probably going to be your best bet, especially for those long boss rooms in Onslaught, especially. Abilities, you can run any of them. I run Phoenix Dive. That helps us proc one of our armor mods more often since it's on a faster cooldown. So that's why I run Phoenix Dive, whatever glide you prefer. Okay, melees. Arcane Needle's pretty essential here. Mostly for you can unravel bosses and mini champions just for more damage, as well as it helps us keep our Transcendence uptime up because it extends our Transcendence grenade when we're doing melee damage. And it helps us proc Devour easily, which is kind of like a cog in this build. Grenade, you can run any grenade, it doesn't matter with this, you're not really using it. I just have the healing grenade for the off chance that I need it. I can throw it at myself to save my life, but we're using stasis turret, so we consume that grenade anyways. But Feed the Void and Bleak Watcher are our must-pick aspects. They feed into each other. We use Feed the Void to get grenade energy, as well as full healing. Devour's just sweet. And then Bleak Watcher is the heart of this build, so you for sure need that. The fragments. So there is some flexibility in the fragments, but some of these are must-haves, such as this first one, Facet of Rune. This just makes our ignitions bigger with Song of Flame, as well as our Stasis Crystal and Shatter Range bigger from all the enemies we're going to be freezing, which is a lot. Facet of Awakening. This allows us to get ionic traces with our weapons that I'll show you. So I would highly recommend this one. This helps us get more ability energy, which this setup pumps out. We have Facet of Protection. It's always good for more damage resistance. Facet of Courage. This just makes it so that our Song of Flame does more damage to frozen enemies. This one isn't too essential, so but it will make our freezing singularity do more damage against frozen enemies as well. So it's not fully essential, but I'm a big fan of this. And then last, Facet of Balance. I like this one. You're gonna get more grenade energy when you defeat a bunch of frozen targets, and you're gonna get more melee energy when you defeat a bunch of targets with your uh, light weapons, which is what we're primarily using. You could sub this one out for Facet of Grace since we are going to be using a kinetic primary, but we, to be honest, we use it semi-sparingly. I mean, we use it somewhat often, but I like the 10 discipline this also gives. It helps me get as close as possible to this 100, 100, 100 across the board here. So that's why I have that set up. Alright, I'll catch you in a brief moment with our weapons and our armor mods. Alright. On to weapons. So, there is some flexibility here, but I would highly recommend this weapon setup. We're starting with the Prospector. So, the Prospector got completely reworked. It's like a whole different weapon now. It essentially shoots out cluster bombs that do a ton of AoE and does pretty chunky damage to bosses. This thing, especially in Onslaught, will absolutely clear waves. It has chain reaction built into it, and so it's going to absolutely chain from enemy to enemy. So don't underestimate this weapon. Like you don't have to use the Prospector, but It really goes well with this build. It helps you chain up tons of kills. I'm using a Volt Shot special weapon. You can use like a Forbearance with chain reaction demo. Just some special arc weapon because we're going to be running some arc reserves. So you want to run a arc special weapon of any capacity. And if you're really struggling with barriers, you could run something like a shotgun, like I've got here. But Song of Flame does give you barrier rounds, and so I frequently just use my Song of Flame and just shoot with my Kavas stuff here to do barrier champions, which is our kinetic primary. You could run whatever the heck you want. But this legendary version of Kavastov has attrition orbs and demolitionists, and this really helps give us some extra ability energy and orbs of power that feeds into more ability energy slash supers and grenades and everything. So when you looked at that screen and you seen all those orbs that we made, that was because of attrition orbs. So don't sleep on this. And we're running a new weapon mod, which is Synergy, which this also makes it more likely for an orb of power to spawn. So this thing will make a ton of orbs. And Dealer's Choice is a good origin trait. This also gives you more super energy on top of it. So it's a very underrated weapon. I would definitely give it a try. Obviously, it's not as good as the exotic one, but Prospector goes so hard that I feel like you're sacrificing a lot to run something like, say, the Wendigo plus normal Kvastov. But it would be perfectly fine if you wanted to do that. You would just use the Kvastov more. And if you were going to do the exotic one, I definitely would replace Courage with Grace. Alright, onto the armor. Definitely need an arc siphon for our arc weapons. Definitely want an ashes to assets. This will help us get our Song of Flame back. And then a kinetic siphon. This will just make it so we get even more orbs. And all those orbs feed into Grenade Kickstarter. This is our main use of our orb generation. This helps us get our stasis turret back quicker. Firepower. This works in Transcendence to get even more orbs to feed back into just general orb generation to get our super back. And then Impact Induction, so we can use our Strand Melees to help chip down on our Stasis turret. And then we have 3 Arc Reserves on the chest piece. We have an Arc Scavenger and an Arc Holster. This will help us give us a little bit of auto loading to our Arc Specials and then help us get even more ammo to feed into them. And then an Innervation so that all those orbs we're creating will feed back into our uh, Stasis turret grenade. And then I'm running Double Bomber and a Reaper. So this just means every time we Phoenix dive, we'll get even more orbs. So you should have no problem getting orb generation with this build. Um, Now to the Rhymecoat Raymond. This is our exotic class armor, and this is kind of leads into the general playstyle. So we'll finish here before we get to the gameplay. It reads, your Bleakwatcher turrets are enhanced with extended range and surrounded by stasis crystal in a storm. While standing in the storm, you are granted icicles over time. Icicles activate when you fire your weapons, applying slow to targets. So that secondary part where you're getting icicles for your weapon, that is a pretty nice effect. But the main way we want to use this is throwing the Bleakwatcher onto a group of enemies, so it spawns those crystals. So not only when those crystals blow up does it proc Devour and gives you uh, gives you super energy with ashes to assets, it essentially makes your stasis turret function as a damage grenade, and that it does a lot of damage, like a surprising amount. And then it just leaves a Bleakwatcher turret there for the next 25 seconds. It's pretty freaking sweet. And if you do want to throw one at your feet and stand in it, which I do sometimes, your Kvastov or your Indebted Kindness, you'll shoot out little icicle things that do pretty solid damage. It's not nothing too crazy, but it's definitely a great secondary effect. But overall, this exotic armor is sweet. There are some artifact mods that are helping this build too. Um, I'm not running any champion weapons. Stasis turret absolutely owns unstops and overloads, and then barrier rounds. If you wanted to pick a weapon that stunned barriers, you could. Otherwise, I just use Song of Flame, like I said. Rapid impact is pretty good for our prospector. Wind chill. This will help you get frost armor. This crystalline converter is pretty good. It'll make your, if you're using a stasis power melee, armor of Aramis. Eh. Hail of the Storm. This one's pretty good. Shattering stasis crystals, really shards. This is a good perk. This one's pretty nice if you want to run something like Lost Signal, and then run like the Callus mini tool or another primary, but not necessarily with this specific setup. The main two you're going to want are Kinetic Impacts and Brain Freeze. Brain Freeze is really good with Stasis Turret, and then I can't afford this one yet, but I have tried it. Both of them are good. I mean, you'll want both once you can get them, but I would prioritize Brain Freeze first, so your Stasis Turret does even more freezing. But if you need unstops or you prefer this, go right for it. Other than that, I will catch you guys in some gameplay. Alrighty here, I'm just skipping to the last 10 waves of this onslaught so that you don't have to... The first 40 waves are pretty novice. These last 10 steps it up in difficulty, so that's why we're starting here. The main gameplay loop here is you want to put down as many stasis turrets as possible, and then use them to crowd control the enemies. It's not too complicated of a gameplay loop, and we'll cycle Transcendence for when we need it. Try to keep Devour up. There's a little bit of finesse to it, like you can't just completely... See that I threw my healing grenade here. So that is one downside of when Transcendence is ending. Healing grenade is the fastest cooldown on all of the grenades, so that does make a difference in my opinion. If you do whiff your grenade, like you don't actually throw it on the stasis turret, it'll have the fastest cooldown. So that's another reason to run healing turret. But stasis turret's fairly easy to use. You just spam it down in an area you want to lock down. And a trick is if you shoot the stasis crystals that are next to the enemies, it will proc Devour off of killing that, which is pretty nice. So, because without Devour, your grenade recharge is kind of slow, but with it, as you'll see, I'm getting tons of stasis turrets. So, you want to keep putting them down basically off cooldown if you can. So yeah, let us skip closer to the boss fight room, because that's really where the heat picks up. So I will skip to the boss fight here in just a second. Alright, going into the boss fight. I like to throw an extra stasis turret out before I rally, because it's free. Why not? As you'll see, I make quite the blunder here, and I shoot my grenade launcher into my teammate's back. You'll see why Prospector is so sweet in this boss fight. Other than, you know, the fact that I killed myself with it. It will absolutely crowd control the heck out of this room. Like, if there's a big group of enemies, just shoot it into the pack, they all die. It is super sweet. I was trying to proc Devour here. I'm trying to shoot the crystal, hoping it had a big enough blast radius. My teammates were somewhat chipping on the boss here. I'm just trying to keep the absolute horde of enemies kind of dealt with while slowly chipping at the boss. But as you'll see, the Warlock Prismatic Grenade's pretty good. So you gotta be careful with, if you need a stasis turret and you prop Transcendence, you're kind of screwed. Because you're stuck with the Prismatic Grenades until it ends. And if you're killing a bunch of guys, Transcendence lasts a long time, so you gotta get into a big group of enemies like I am. But we kind of want to get a stasis turret onto the boss here, hopefully, because when those 4 crystals blow up next to him, it's going to do a ton of damage. Song of Flame isn't a perfect choice right now, by the way, because I know that ignitions are kind of bugged, but I'm sure that'll be fixed if anyone's watching this in the future. But what you want to do with Song of Flame is just use the snap. It does way more damage. So you see how many enemies are out here? I'm gonna try to deal with them. I could probably chunk boss down, but as you'll see, I am just absolutely mopping the floor with those ads out there. Because I'm trying to keep the enemies off my teammates. And Prospector is perfect for this. Just, you see all those enemies? There's like none left. There was probably a freaking 100 of my kills from this match just right there, just spamming my Prospector. So, I don't got much more else to say. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and you enjoyed the build. I will catch you guys in another video.